Miss Saigon is a fictional 1989 musical which takes place during the Vietnam War. Of course, the musical is centered in Saigon, Vietnam. The show opens with a scene in a Saigon bar displaying several young girls dancing and offering themselves as prostitutes to American GIs who are more than willingly accepting the offer. This, in comparison to history, is pretty accurate. During the war, brothels and bars were booming with business from American officers looking to have a good time. Saigon, in particular, was the hot spot to go if you wanted to buy a girl or have a drink with your fellow officers. Prostitution was at a high as well, due to the horrible poverty and living conditions sweeping Vietnam. Oftentimes, young girls had nothing left and had no other choice but to sell themselves in order to survive, which is what has happened to the title character, Kim.
I'm 17 and I'm new here today. The village I come from seems so far away. All of the girls know much more to say, but I know I have a heart like the sea. A million dreams are in me.
The young American GIs are also accurately portrayed in the male leads, Chris and his best friend, John, who appear to be in their early 20s. John buys Kim for the night as a gift to Chris.
What I want is that girl in the dress.
Have a good eye. Her name is Kim. She's my new princess.
During their night together, Kim tells the tragic tale of how she ended up where she is now. She confesses to Chris that her village was burned and that she was the lone survivor. This was extremely common during the Vietnam War, considering the GIs were on a mission to search and destroy their Viet Cong enemy. They would often partake in napalm raids and burn down entire villages, killing anyone in it in the process, including innocent civilians.
Do you want one more tale of a Vietnam girl? Want to know I was bound to a man I don't love? Do you want to be told how my village was burned? Want to hear how my family was blasted away? How I ran from the rice fields and saw them in flame? How my parents were bodies whose faces were gone?
After Kim's explanation, she and Chris fall in love, and Chris promises to take her back to America with him. However, in an emergency evacuation, Chris leaves and Kim is left behind. We then flash forward 3 years after the fall of Saigon, where we find Kim living in poverty and raising she and Chris's son, Tam. This is a very realistic point in the story, as many children were born in the Vietnam War to Vietnamese mothers and American GI fathers. These children were referred to as Amerasians and suffered harsh discrimination in Vietnam. They were viewed as an ugly reminder of an invading army and were referred to as the dust of life. These children were many times ostracized, and one mother even claimed she feared her daughter would be soaked with gasoline and burnt.
My baby's not to blame for what I've done.
You must decide upon which side you're really on. You hoard to make that kid.
That isn't what I did. Don't touch my son.
He is one drop in a flood. Come here to take our blood. Our marriage back restored. Forget that he was born.
Meanwhile, in America, Chris has gotten married, and John now works for an organization which aids Vietnamese, particularly Boi Doi. Boi Doi, which actually means street children, is a term widely popularized by this musical to refer to Amerasian children suffering in Vietnam. In the song titled Boi Doi, John sings of children whose crime was being born and says they are a living reminder of all we, the U.S., failed to do.
They are the living reminder of all the good we failed to do. We can't forget, must not forget, that they all our children too.
For this song, the musical even uses real footage of actual Amerasian children who suffered in the Vietnam War. The efforts of the organization that John works for is similar to the real efforts of organizations of the time, as well as efforts of the American government, such as Operation Baby Lift, which took over 3,000 Vietnamese children out of the dangers of Vietnam and into America for adoption. John decides to tell Chris of Kim and Tam, and Chris decides to return to Vietnam with his wife and John to see so for himself. However, when Chris finds Tam and Kim, he tells Kim he feels it is best that Tam stay in Vietnam with his mother. Kim will not accept this, as she wants a better life for her son than what he will get in the poverty of the Vietnam War. Kim decides to sacrifice herself so that Chris has no choice but to take Tam back to America with him.
Don't be sad, I'm far away, I'll be watching you. This is the hour I swore I'd see.
Though there are no known cases of mothers committing suicide to get their children to America, everyone did want themselves, and especially their children, out of the horrors of Vietnam at the time, and were willing to do whatever it took to help them get there.